live? Wonderful. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about F1 Studio, giving a little bit of an introduction to it, and talking about the Unreal integration as well. Just in case you're confused about who you are or what you're doing here, this is actually like a live broadcast from GDC if you're watching on that iPad there. But my name's Sally, and I'm the staff sound designer at Firelight Technologies, or FMOD, we like to call ourselves. I specialize in technical sound design in FMOD, mostly implementation, which is why I'm talking about the integration into Unreal, because it's really implementation heavy, lots of fun, lots of puzzles you can solve in your own projects. It's good. I've worked on games before, so like the London 2012 Olympics game, and also Stormrise as well, where I was QA. I've also studied quite a lot. I've done my master's in acoustics, so I know a little bit about psychoacoustics, which is really fun. I've spoken at a bunch of conferences as well, so you don't need to worry, you're in good hands with me. I'll show you a few things, you'll have a good time, it'll be sweet. So I'm going to give you that introduction into FMOD Studio and Unreal Engine, and that'll be a lot of fun, like I said. Now there's actually quite a few features in FMOD Studio. I'm not going to go into all of them in a lot of detail, because that would take years, or maybe just hours. Really. But we like to think that FMOD Studio is the premier audio engine and door for interactive video game audio design and implementation. So there's a bunch of things that I'll show you today, and that I'll show you in a completed project as well. So things like multi-track audio, 3D panning capabilities, the mixer snapshots, maybe even profiler if we have enough time. But we're going to focus on that integration into Unreal. So, just some basics. This is a slide. It is not a very interesting slide because it's just going to list a few things that I'm going to show you. Oh wait, no, that was the fun bit in the slide, like the actual bit where it says we're going to throw a party, because working in FMOD is really easy and fun like that. Let me just mirror my screen for you, because I can see this, but you can't. Alright, that's better. Now. Alright, so this is FMOD Studio. This is the project that's tied to my Unreal Engine 4 project at the moment. So I've got a few assets in, a few sound events and also assets in there at the moment, which means that we have some sounds already to play with and some sounds that I can show you. So here I can just flick through some of the sound events that are populated within my project so far. Things like character sounds in this folder, car sounds in this folder, ambiences in this folder, sound effects in this folder. Now each and every one of these objects on the left-hand side here, they're not just sound assets, but they're actually, we call them sound events. So they're the assets placed against the timeline with parameter behaviors attached to them, with mix effects or even just standard DSP effects. And also 3D properties attached to them as well. All of that is packaged into one object that you can trigger in Unreal Engine 4 or Unity if you prefer to work in that too. So all of that design and behavior that you can craft in FMOD Studio gets triggered just with one simple trigger in Unreal. So when you open up FMOD for the first time, this browser will actually have nothing in it, and I'll show you that all you need to do is just right-click in that browser to start creating events. Right-click there, create an event, and that gives you an event that populates into this little window here. This will give you an audio track and a timeline parameter line as well. So here we can actually drag and drop assets straight into this timeline. So we can pick any of our sounds here. I might pick one of these birdie sounds and just drag and drop it straight in. Here we go. And a possum bird. So you can use the sound event just like this, just to trigger one sound asset if you like. We can also do something called adding a multi-sound module. So right-clicking in this timeline here will allow you to create a different array of modules as well. So the single sound is a sound module that only has one asset in it. A multi-sound has a whole playlist attached to it. So here we get our blue multi-sound module, and we can actually grab maybe the rest of these birds. We can drag and drop them down the bottom here into this playlist area. Here, each one of these assets is attached to this particular multi-sound module. I can press play and we can listen to every one. We can randomize the order that they trigger from every time that this particular sound event is triggered. And we can also set to loop if we need that particular asset to loop. We can change the volume and pitch of that asset if you like as well. We can even do crazy things like, or crazy fun things I should say, like adding automation or modulation to each of those sounds. And that's something you'll probably do quite often for things like footsteps and stuff. Adding like a random modulation, you just right click on these dials. And on the right hand side here, you can now see you have a pitch dial and a volume dial, which you can add a custom amount of modulation to. So it's just a range of values that FMOD Studio can pick from to actually modulate the pitch or volume of that particular sound asset every time that particular sound event is triggered and that module is triggered. Crows. So you can have like a crazy amount of like pitch automation and have like suddenly squeaky crows if you like. So crows don't really sound like that, but to demonstrate the point that you can have as much pitch automation, pitch modulation as you like, you can do some pretty crazy things, pretty creative crazy things actually. So that's just two types of modules that you can have in FMOD Studio. Those are pretty useful types of modules and you can do quite a lot with those. However, you might end up wanting to attach perhaps some spatial variation or timing information, timing variation to the playlist of this sound. So we can create what's called a scatter sound module in FMOD. Again, by right-clicking in that track, you can add a scatter sound. From here, you'll recognize this playlist right here, and we can do the same. We can grab our crows again and drag and drop them into the playlist. So we can see each of these crow sounds right here. Now we have a few more options on this left-hand side. So again, we have that volume dial and that pitch dial, but here we have the interval between sounds and the minimum and maximum scatter distance as well. So the interval between sounds is how long FMOD is going to wait before triggering another sound asset from that list. The minimum and maximum scatter distance is the diameter of like the sphere that the sounds are actually going to trigger within. So this type of module is actually really, really useful for creating ambience and also like environmental effects. So for example, we can actually create like the effect of a whole bunch of birds sitting in a tree. We do this. So here we have a minimum distance of 1 and a maximum distance of 20 units. Now that's going to be a pretty big tree of birds, but we can make it a bit smaller. So the scattering distance between the spatial variation between each asset triggering is going to be quite tight. Here we can see that the polyphony is at 16, so it may trigger up to 16 of these sounds at the same time. That's a lot of crows. The next dial over is actually, it says total sounds. So you can actually set a maximum number of sounds that will trigger at all, so that you can create the feeling of there being maybe a tree with birds at the start of a level by setting all this up and saying, actually once you've hit 20 bird sounds that have triggered, just kill it. Just stop the tree with birds because I don't need to be triggering for the rest of my game, right? So you can set that up just there with that dial. There's also a level of volume randomization and pitch randomization that you can add within that scatter module as well. So here, this interval between sounds, we haven't even played with this particular element yet. It's pretty crazy. So we want these bird sounds to trigger like a lot more often. We can make this minimum interval a lot smaller. And if we want to chill out the birds a bit, just say, hey guys, you don't need to be so angry. We can have a pretty chill tree of birds just by increasing that interval between sounds right there. So that's like a pretty fun way to start experimenting with like spatial design with modules in FMOD Studio. And I can show you like heaps of different things about just working in FMOD Studio, but there's a few simple design things that you can do. I can show you a few of these elements within the project here, like our environment ambient sound that actually includes a bunch of scatter sounds here that we've already created that have like programmatically spawning wind accents, the birds as well, and some dogs there too. They all have their own design parameters here for the interval and the minimum maximum scatter distance right there. There's also a car sound here with a fully featured engine. Maybe not as good as the engines in Forza, but you guys have been working on those for a lot longer. So we have an onload and an offload track for our car engine, and that sound actually changes over the course of the RPM parameter here. So we'll actually drive the car around in Unreal, and it sounds a lot better when it's been driven by a real car. There's also like a tires rolling sound, and there's a couple of character sounds in there too, so like footsteps and towing sounds that we've attached to animations. There's even like a grenade sound in there too. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch straight into Unreal. So I've already got the project open right here. You guys used Unreal before? Yeah, a little bit? I don't know if you have. I don't know, you're a composer. Who knows? Okay, so the Unreal integration is actually like pretty cool to use because it actually makes use of the blueprints functionality within Unreal. You can also drag and drop sound events straight into the scene here, into the world, and use those as like point sources within the level. So here I've got all my sounds already implemented, and we can have a look around. It's all like really white and clean. There's a big twister tornado thing right there. We've got like a tunnel here that triggers like a reverb zone. You can see right over there, there's like a car. Can I zoom? I've forgotten how to use this. I don't know how to zoom. That's okay. There's a car. You can see it there. Woo. So, there's a couple of sounds that have been placed within this level, like the environment ambience. We can focus in on that there. So you can see that little speaker that's actually denoting a sound that's been placed within the level. That one actually auto-activates at the start of the level, and it auto-switches off at the end of the level. There's also the tunnel reverb is placed within the level as well there, so that's handled with a snapshot and a reverb return. And then there's also a vehicle filter which handles actually like switching off the character sounds when you jump into the car, because you don't really expect to hear the character breathing when you're sitting in the car looking at a car. I don't usually, so yeah, we set that up. So when you're working in Unreal, you can drag and drop these sound events that are within your FMOD folder, within your content folder, straight into the scene here, like I've done with these particular sound events. However, there's a wonderful world of blueprints that exists just behind this blueprints button, which you can access and actually use to place your sound events and trigger them within the logic that you have within the level at different points. Don't go spinning beach ball on me now. There we go, that's okay. Alright, so we can do things like looking at our level blueprint. Where is it? My game? Oh, that's not. Oh, this is funny. Open level blueprint. So here we have our level blueprint. So blueprint is kind of like a map that controls with a graphical programming language what's happening within this level. There's a few elements in here, so we can see how our reverb snapshots and our vehicle snapshots are triggered. And these are really simple examples of what kind of blueprint stuff that you can do with Unreal. So here we have a play command and a stop command. They're attached to the tunnel reverb, which is placed within our level. So Unreal automatically just goes and grabs that element from that we've placed within the level, and it just goes, hey, when the player has begun overlapping with our reverb trigger volume, switch it on, tell it to play. And when our player stops overlapping with the reverb trigger volume, switch it off, tell it to stop, we don't need it to play anymore. And really simple logic like that is really easy to do with Unreal, which makes it kind of fun. I think it's kind of fun. But there's also other things that you can do, like triggering sounds attached to particular elements, like we've done for our twister sound and our buggy slash the Dune buggy thing. So in Unreal, you don't just have an event graph or the actual blueprint that contains all of that logic within it. You also have a number of other elements depending on what the object is. So you might need to open up the viewport and actually like jump into the viewport where you see all of the physical characteristics of that particular object and like the particle effects and everything. I'm not much of a visual person, like I'm not a level designer or anything like that. But here what you can do is you can attach that sound to that object so that if that twister started moving about the level, the sound would track with it. That's pretty useful for a moving object. You don't want it to stay in one place if it has to move. That would sound bad. So here you can just add a component very simply. You'd add an FMOD component and then you can actually just drag and drop it, place it at the right location on that object, and then you can attach the sound event in the details panel right here. So you can actually see when you open that details panel that all of the events that exist within my project are right there. And you can select, we can change the sound if we wanted to, but I think the tornado sound is quite appropriate to place on the tornado object. So we're going to leave it like that. I'll leave it right there. So here you can also set up auto activation as well. So because this element is actually like an element of the level, we would want it to start blowing when the level starts and then stop blowing when the level stops. So that is all handled by Unreal. So the same happens with our buggy. But I'll actually show you an animation blueprint and how to tag animations onto a character as well, because that's actually pretty fun and like a super cool part of Unreal, but it's actually really easy to do this kind of stuff. So let's see. I'm going to search in here for AnimBP. Yeah. So we open up this animation blueprint. Now an animation blueprint in Unreal actually has like all of the modeling and like rigging information all like baked into it, but it also has like the animation like graph, like the graphing and the logic about what moves when for that animation. If you're really into animation, I think this would be really fun to play with, but I don't know too much about it, so I just know that this is where I get to have the ability to actually sync up my sound triggers with the animation that's playing. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I remember working at Sega Studios Australia where we had to code our own system that did this, and that took forever and it caused a lot of pain and heartache. So being able to see this view within its own game engine is like amazing, really, really cool. So here, like, well, you can't really see he's moving very much because he's just like standing there breathing, right? But say if we were to load up the jumping animation, we can turn this character around, see him from different angles and see where the footfalls are. If I can like, that's a bit better. And here we can see that there's actually already a few notifications placed on this particular animation. So here I've placed a jump footstep, like notify or hook, and an effort vocalization notify or hook. From here, in the newer version of our integration, you can actually assign the events straight onto this particular notification here. So that's even this is based off an old version of the integration, so it's even easier now. But you just place in these notify events on this little timeline here, and you can go to town, like actually placing it on the right frame and everything, and it makes it very easy for you to do your job. You don't have to like hand off all these tiny little events to an animator and just hope that they put all of the events on there. Because sometimes they don't understand that you really do need to have like different sounds for different types of footfalls on different surfaces and stuff. So this tool makes it really easy to do that. What else can I show you? I can actually play this game. Let's play it and actually have a listen to it here. I haven't even done that yet. It's really bad. So here, you can hear there's like the dogs and the birds triggering in the environment. Here is footfalls and all the assets that are associated with that particular footfalls. I've baked all those the clothing and the armor sounds into him there. You can even hear that when you get closer to the twister. That there's more layers of wind sound that actually come into the mix. Now each layer of wind sound builds on the last one, and the tone changes slightly as you get closer to the twister. It's actually going to get really loud, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. So once you get really, really close, you'll actually notice that a lot of these character sounds, like the sound of our little dude running, they actually get ducked down by a snapshot. Because like, if I was to be standing really close into, like next to a twister, like a tornado or something like that, I wouldn't really expect to hear my own like armor sounds or my footstep sounds. So we can emulate these sorts of things just by using snapshots to make mix changes within our FMOD Studio project. So let's actually jump into our car. So here we just use, I'm actually just pressing one key to switch between the two characters, so between the car and the character himself. Every time we press that key, we get the startup sound on there. So that startup sound plays through, and then it starts up that engine sound, and that's actually another event that's nested within that event. And that way we can have that sound that actually like contextualizes that engine every time we jump into it. This engine sound, it's actually just hooked up to the RPM, and also we calculate the load on the engine as well in this in Blueprint. So once I actually back it out of the ridge there, that's right. I baked a bug into the sound so that we can troubleshoot it. So there's a drop in there for a reason. So let's actually do this. So once we connect to our game with the profiler, we can actually take a recording of what's happening in the game at that point in time. So now that I know I've heard something funny in my Unreal project, I don't really want my car to like drop out when it goes between like 2 RPM values. So I can just jump back into Unreal, play through my game a little bit, like, alright, well, it definitely sounds weird. What have I done? What have I forgotten? We can jump out of Unreal, go back to our recording in FMOD Studio, and actually we get a profile or a recording of all the events that have triggered within that period that we were recording our game. So here we can see the instances graphs for each of the events. So the whistling, the tornado, the engine sound, that's total engine, so that includes the startup sound. We're just going to look for our engine sound here. We can have a look to see what happened just by flicking through each of these graphs here. So we can figure out whether maybe the event itself stopped. We know it didn't because the lifespan continues throughout that point and throughout the whole recording actually. Maybe we can have a look at voices or just the levels. We can definitely see there's a big drop there. So we could hear it. We know that there's something wrong with the sound. So now that we've caught it like on camera, so to speak, or caught it in the profiler, we can jump back into our session and have a look at that particular event, the car engine, and we can just have a look at these modules and what have I done? What have I done? Did you guys see something? I'm not sure. One of these sounds is not like the other ones. I think it's this one. So if we flick through all these sound modules, we can see that all of these volume dials are set to 0 dB. So there's actually some volume coming through, right? But this one, I think I turned the volume down for some reason. Maybe just to see whether we could detect a bug. But we found one. So if we just turn this up now, we'll be able to hear. Go on load. Alright. I reckon that's going to work now. So we can, I like to save and build at the same time. Build that out. Unreal should, oh, there we go. No, wrong version, that's okay. But we go back to the profiler. Back to the profiler. Would you like to go back to the profiler? There you go. Even though we have a recording that has that big gap in the middle there, we switch on API capture. We can play through the whole recording with an updated Banks version. And we can hear that we fixed that problem there, which means that if you, say, had a build cycle that took maybe a couple of hours to complete on a larger project, you don't actually have to wait for the whole time of that build to compile to be able to hear that you fixed the bugs in your audio if you've done something silly or forgetful like I do all the time. I even make spelling mistakes sometimes, so gosh, everyone makes those sorts of little mistakes. I think that's about all the time I have for this little Unreal Engine 4 demo here. But thank you for joining me. I hope that you learnt a little bit about F1 Studio and how you can work with Unreal Engine 4 and all the cool things that you can do with it. These are actually, this project is actually based off the Unreal Engine 4 video tutorial series, which is actually up on our YouTube channel. So if you search FMOD TV, you'll find those video tutorials there. They're also online as well with screen caps and everything. So you're able to follow through and create all these sounds from scratch. We provide all the assets for you and even the Unreal Engine 4 level there. So it's everything there ready to go for you guys. I hope you